Today's guest is an actor, singer, and writer, best known for her 9 seasons as Meredith on NBC's The Office. She's also appeared on shows like Young Sheldon, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and Steven Universe. Now, recently, Kate became a fan favorite on Dancing with the Stars and The Masked Singer, and co-starred with Rita Moreno in The Prank, now streaming on Apple TV. Known for her talent and humor, she continues to captivate audiences, and this December, she'll be hitting the road with none other than Jane Lynch for their
What?
Swingin Little Christmas tour, featuring songs from their Billboard charting holiday album, A Swingin Little Christmas. Please
I
welcome my
love
girl,
it.
Kate Flannery. Hey,
Yes,
Kate!
Kate. Woo!
Now, I just said, but tell us about this whole holiday show and your album.
Jane Lynch and I did an album together 8 years ago. The very first time I ever went to Second City, Jane Lynch was understudying for Bonnie Hunt. We figured this out later. And then, like, not even 2 years later, I became her understudy. Life is crazy. Life is crazy.
I
So,
love it.
yeah, when we were doing The
Wow.
Office, we sang at a couple benefits, and then The Office ended pretty much the same time Glee ended. So Jane got asked to do a show, like a cabaret show, and she didn't want to do it alone. So she dragged me along, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Darling,
And you
yes.
know, Erica, Kate has always been like a lounge singer. She
I
has
love
this wonderful
it.
act. Tell us about that act.
Yeah, I had an act called The Lampshades. We were like a dying lounge act. We used to host a lot of stand-up shows. And so we were like kind of in the stand-up world, but like our own weird, like we were literally trapped in an act.
Wait, where'd the lampshades come from? What's that name come from?
Just because if you're the life of the party, you put a lampshade
Uh,
on your head. Yeah. But we used to
mhm.
do mashups of 70s and 80s songs, but we were sort of like in an unrequited love situation on stage. There was a lot going on.
Fabulous.
So fun, like really, really fun. And we played like we were kind of in the cover band world with like we used to open for the Dan Band and for Puddle's Pity Party and like Garfunkel Notes, like that kind of, you kind of get the vibe. So we had a nice run. It was good. And so I feel like I'm never by myself on stage live. So it's nice to be with Jane Lynch too. So she's sort of like the nun cracking me on the knuckles, and I'm sort of like the sweet dog knocking everything over. You know what I mean?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but we're going to get into today's topic, which is a serious topic, and I'm
Yes.
I'm glad that you were able and you're going to be transparent and discuss with us how to get through this. For today's grown ass topic, we're talking about dealing with grief, a challenge many of us are facing, whether it's from personal loss or the weight of current events. Grief takes many forms. Now, some are grieving about the recent election, while others are experiencing more personal losses, like the death of a loved one, the end of a marriage, or even the loss of a person we used to be. Grief can feel overwhelming, and finding a way to cope and move forward isn't always clear. This week, we're diving into this important topic that impacts women everywhere. And Kate, you recently lost your wonderful father who had just turned 100, and you've been very open about it. You wrote a lovely IG, and I loved all the pictures. Can you share your journey and how you've been navigating it?
Well, thank you so much. I have to say, I'm so proud of my dad. He was so brave. And I mean, to be on the planet and still be totally with it. I mean, a lot of us are trying to get out of like the next gig I have. Like he showed up for life and he took care of a lot of people. He owned a bar, Flannery's Tavern, that my grandfather started. And he just was like the kindest person. And he every day he woke up like really happy to be here. And he used to own the rooms above the bar. So a lot of the guys that lived up there, if they couldn't make the rent, he would just let them work it off. So we always had a lot of alcoholics like putting up a fence, cutting the grass.
Right. I love it.
Like that was
I
my
love
Wow.
dad.
it.
Like you just can't, like they just don't make them like that anymore.
And he worked till he was 87
Yeah,
at the bar,
only
right?
because they sold the bar. Yeah, he's like, what am I doing here? The plan was to drop dead behind the bar. What am I doing here? But I kind of understand. Like I understand. I'm very much wired like him. I'm so like I am happy to be on planet Earth, and it's so hard that he's gone because I still feel his energy all the time, but it's like he became a really strong compass for me because there's so much you know, darkness and BS, particularly in show business. We know this, right?
Sure.
But on planet
Absolutely.
Earth right now, I just feel like ugh, between politics and there's just a lot of dark stuff going on. So it was just so great to have him here because it kept me clear. I got to go home a lot. the universe conspired to have me close by. So I feel like I was always doing things that were like pretty close, because he'd say, don't babysit me. Don't come home and babysit me. He's like, you figure it out. If you're work, I want you to, keep working. And I feel like the world really was like, yes, okay. So I did a lot of weird stuff and loved every minute of it. I'm still doing weird stuff. Bring it on. And but it just kind of allowed me to say no to people that I've given a little too much oxygen to in my life.
Sure.
They don't really need it. I'm not really special to them. I'm just like one more person that they feel like is kissing their ass or adoring them. I mean, in retrospect,
Like, how did they reach out to you once it happened? Or were you surprised at people that didn't reach out?
um, no, I was not surprised by anybody that didn't. It was fine because I know who my real friends are. I know who, and I mean, there were a lot of people that were a little unexpected and kind, but I also feel like uh it's so personal when someone
Sure.
and also, and actually when you, because I felt like things were changing. My dad died in January, and I felt like last October I was like, oh, something feels like it's shifting. And then when he made it to 100 in December, I just felt like he got really tired, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, I think so I actually went back home for like 2 weeks, and I got this call, like, they called the ambulance, they called the priest, we're going to the hospital. My dad's like, I'll see you when you get here. He was like so happy that he was done, which is a rare
Aw.
thing. But it also made me remind me like everything's okay.
Well, going back to what you were saying about someone keeping you grounded, right? I mean, having a father who clearly like kept you in your place, but in a good way.
Yeah.
How does it feel to not have that layer anymore, navigating the world and navigating, like you said, Hollywood?
It's a little tough, but I also have his voice in my head. I have his spirit in my heart, and I can
Yeah.
hear him. So I'll tell you, one time I was at his house, and some like high school girl knocked on the door and wanted to take a picture with me. And my one sister was like, "What are you doing? This is our private house." Like, she just, I wasn't there, but I was like, "Calm down. It's okay." And then and she kept like bothering. And then her father like came and sat next to my dad on the porch for like an hour. I wasn't there. And I'm like, I remember coming in the back door. My sister's like, "There's some guy on that porch. His daughter was taking a picture with you." And I remember I was like I kind of waited, and then the guy left, and my dad came in. He goes, "Knock on the door and do it. Take a picture. It'll take you 2 minutes. Just do it." And I was like,
Yeah.
he's absolutely right. The thing is, like, I am so lucky to be in that position that someone would knock on my door to take a picture with me.
Sure.
Because I gotta
Yeah,
tell you, 19 years ago, they weren't doing that,
girl.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, he was there to tell you don't get too big for your britches, right? Like he's like
But
bring
it's
you
also
down to
like,
earth.
this is your reality. Like,
Yeah.
enjoy it or get out. Like, you gotta make some choices. And that's why I always I'm just reminded of him, especially if I'm with another actor who's sort of annoyed when someone stops them.
Mm.
And it may be the 10th time, 15th time somebody stops you that day, but it's this person's first time to see you, and they're really excited.
Yeah.
And I'm on a show that, like, they may not love Meredith, but they love The Office. So I'm
Of
representing a team.
course.
So it's my responsibility to represent, and as best I can whenever I can. And just to remember that it takes 2 minutes to be generous. But I just love that my dad, really planted that seed in me. So,
I love that.
yeah.
And he
I
must have been
love
so
that.
proud of you.
He wasn't loving the nudity part on The Office, but at least it was NBC.
How have you been able to navigate the ups and downs? What are some of your suggestions, especially with a parent, like,
Yeah.
losing a parent?
I want to say like probably 4 years ago, I made a decision that I was like, oh, okay, we have limited time here. Like, I can't pretend like this isn't happening, that life isn't getting shorter for him. So,
Right.
I made a decision that I was just going to go home as much as I could, as much, even if it's once a month for like overnight, whatever it is, like, I'm going to be there. I'll do my best. And I think just like kind of making like, I remember like not wanting to say that to anybody else, like, until my dad passes, I kind of can't do certain things because I don't want to be far away. Like, I just,
Absolutely.
and then like I said, I feel like the universe conspires to be like, hey, if that's your choice, then you sort of get more. So I remember at the height of the pandemic, I luckily had a friend who lived about 2 miles from my dad, and she had a garage apartment. So I actually got to quarantine there. This is like back when you had to quarantine for 2 weeks before you saw anybody. And I
Hmm.
got like Instagram. I felt like Fonzie over the garage. I was like so happy that it was great. So, and I felt like I felt like I threaded the needle. Like I was like, oh my God, you guys, like we get to be together. We're hanging out on the porch and like, so I had like I had like a month with him because everything was like, actually it was even more than that because everything was like Zoom and stuff. Like what
Yeah.
doing, like you didn't have to be there because nobody was anywhere. So I felt like we were sitting on the porch and like the sun would go down and we would watch. It was like we didn't want the day to end. It was like we had to force ourselves to get up and leave in the dark.
That's
You
Yeah.
know? So I'm
wonderful.
just so grateful for that time. But I also feel like if we can be honest with ourselves and kind of accept the reality of what's happening with a friend or a parent, like if
Mm-hmm.
they really
Hmm.
aren't going to be here a long time, I think, that definitely helped. And, not everybody gets that message and you can't beat yourself up. Like, when but if you see it, and you really, you like I say, just like lean in, you will never regret it.
You were there when he passed, or
I
were
was in the
you?
next room, but I was there. I got there the morning of because I flew all night. We did have one day, but he was asleep, but he looked so peaceful. I
Mm.
just knew he was just ready. He didn't look like I went through this with my mom 12 years ago, and she was a much different story. I don't think she was as at peace with herself, and I think
Mm.
which made it harder in some ways. But I knew when she was ready, though, again, she got this thing like over her the last 2 weeks of her life where, because she used to have chronic complainer put on her chart. And I was like, that's a thing? I was like,
Just so
wow.
you know.
I thought I
Yeah.
was just like being judgy.
She let you know I'm going to
Yeah,
complain.
I'm gonna
Okay.
complain. Yeah. I'm gonna put that on my chart too, for
Right,
sure.
totally. But then like something came over her 2 weeks before she passed, and I was like, oh, because I remember I was hosting a show for TV Guide Network, and I had to do press in New York. It was an all-female stand-up show called Stand Up in Stilettos. And I remember I did this press tour, and I was like coming down to Philadelphia on the train, and I was like, oh, I'm not like I was like, this is something's shifted here.
Mm.
She stopped complaining. But whatever it is. But I felt like I
Wow.
got the best of her.
Yeah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
even
Well,
went through this with my sister 5 years ago. So I remember there was a shift in her personality where you're like, oh, there's
wow.
something resigned here.
Well, what you were saying about the pandemic, I will say, I think that was the one wonderful thing about it. I think everyone kind of got to take a step back and slow down and take stock. Like, I know my parents are getting older, and I never used to see them on a daily or weekly basis. I would see them on the holidays, and then during the pandemic, we would get together every Sunday. We had our little bubble, and we've continued that post-pandemic. And I literally, now they're in their 80s, and I'm like, you know what, this is a blessing because I think I will be in a similar place to where you are, where if they go, I'll be like, I had this time with them. And so
Yeah.
that's a great advice to tell people to take time because you're not going to get it back, right?
It's so true. And I will say some relationships are more complicated than others. You don't get that. And maybe
Right.
you shouldn't, they could be toxic or something where you're like,
Sure.
it just, and that's up to you. And you have to take care of yourself on this planet. So,
Sure.
even if
Sure.
you love somebody, you can't be their whipping boy, whatever it is, like whatever, you gotta do what you gotta do. But I think if there's love and there's ease and calmness and you can really check in with yourself and it feels good, then do it. I think some people need more boundaries. They just do.
Sure. Sure.
If your
Definitely.
relatives are addicts or something, like it can get very, very, very tricky. And I don't wish it on anybody, but I also feel like you can't pretend you don't know what you know, you know.
Right.
Because this is part of
Be
like
real.
being really grown up. It's like, I don't love I don't love the fact that I have family members that are addicts, but if I don't accept that, then I'm screwed because I'm
And it
Mm-hmm.
has nothing to do with you. It was
exactly
them. Yeah, so
exactly.
you don't have that guilt. What do you do to cope at times when maybe you get this sense of grief coming over you?
I do pray. Sometimes I go to Catholic Mass. I was raised Catholic. My dad, he went to Mass every single day. He knew there was issues with the Catholic Church, but he thought that there was something in the prayer and meditation for him. It actually kept him sober. It kept him like on track. And I understand that part. I feel like again,
Mm.
it's some of these religions are complicated, and as a woman, there's not a lot of room for Catholic women to feel powerful in the
Mm.
system or whatever. But I also feel like you can't always throw the baby out with the bathwater. If there's something in there that actually helps and if it keeps my mind quiet, I listen to music. I try to like just kind of get out in nature and watch some sunsets, like whatever it is that you can do that puts you in touch with like the best part of your life. in the day, whether it's like just enjoying the light from the sunset or sunrise, like whatever that is, or
Simple thing.
yeah, and all that shit is free. It's free.
That's right.
You don't have to put yourself on a plane or at some resort, because that sometimes makes things more complicated for me.
Right. And being a public figure like you are, I know when my mom passed, I was on a red carpet and then Monique came to me and she started giving me the condolences. And then, she could see I'm welling up and she's like, we're not going to do this now. And I'm thinking to myself, why did you do it?
Yeah.
Why
you brought it up?
You brought it up. Then I'm over here. So how do you deal publicly? Because people are well-meaning. They're well-meaning folk.
Yeah.
But how do you deal with it, especially being a public person?
I feel like I'm very clear, particularly about my dad. I think if it was my mom, I would be more conflicted. And I will say, maybe like a month before he died, I was at some party and there were a bunch of comedians. And I was trying to be careful because of COVID. And I was like, sorry, I'm not like hugging or shaking. I was like trying to keep a little distance. And two comedians were like, oh no, you're dead. Like, and my boyfriend was like, I want to fucking kill those guys. Like, I was like, okay, these are not like the people. Like, I obviously said too much to people because some people, it's like the comic that, I don't have to tell you, Loni.
Yeah.
I made a lot of mistakes in the past, being vulnerable, like whatever, or watching other people be vulnerable and other people overshare. I feel like I've let some other people make those mistakes for me. Because I do feel like there's some people on IG that are like, I'm like, what are you sharing?
Yeah.
This is
yeah, there's a lot of TMI going on for sure. But even as a non-public person, I think we all struggle to be there for our friends when they're grieving. Like, what would you suggest to people who are trying to just be friends and trying to help you through the grief? Maybe it's less is more. I mean,
so it depends on, I think just asking,
yeah, are you okay? Yeah,
getting help, I had friends that a couple friends that flew out to the funeral, and I was like, oh my God, they came out to LA, and I was like, oh my God, it was like so sweet.
That means a lot. Yeah,
it does. And one person actually, like the guy in our band that I play with, he actually played at the funeral, which was so, and then he played at the gravesite. It was so sweet. Everybody's different. Every situation's different.
Yes.
But I think just asking and just having this sensitivity that to understand that it takes a long time to grieve. I mean, I don't know if I'm ever going to grieve.
You probably won't. Yeah.
And that's okay. And I think there is this feeling like you got to get over it. You got to get over it. Because I think when my mom died, I had a month before the office started again. And I remember one of my bosses came in when I was in hair and makeup and said he was really sorry. And I was like, he was more uncomfortable than I was. I mean, but it was very
it is uncomfortable.
I was like,
right.
Sometimes people are like, they get it. They've been there. But, and obviously as you get older, you lose more people. So,
Yeah, I find that a lot of times too, dealing with grief, you get over the grief, but the people around you don't, and you have to become the comforter.
Yeah, you console them. Yeah, you're making them feel better. Yeah.
And sometimes if somebody if your loved one had a heart attack, like my dad had a heart attack, all of a sudden you hear every heart attack story in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm lucky my dad was 100. I don't hear a lot of 100 stories.
Right.
Thank God. But there's a whole lot of, and then of course all the cancer stories and I get it, they're triggered and they mean well, but sometimes I'm like, it's not about you.
Well, that's the answer there. Because I listen, Loni knows it's always about me, so I have a really hard time with that. But I had a very close friend recently who lost consecutively her mother and her sister. And it's kind of it was horrible. So I was reaching out to her, and I wouldn't hear back. So I'm like, okay. Then finally, I just was like, you know what? I'm here when you need me. And I had to take that as that's my place right now. I can't force myself on her. I can't be like, you need to talk to me. What's going on? Because that's about me. That's not about her. And now that time has passed, we reunited recently, but the cue is read the room. And if they will let them know you're here when you need them and not forcing yourself on someone who's not ready to talk about it.
Absolutely. And I will say I'm so lucky because I feel like I've been able to go home to my dad's place, because my sister lived with him, and really, really, God, she navigated so many of the changes. She did such a great job. She's really, and a couple of us just they just came through in such a big way. But but I feel like I've gotten to go home, and that's actually helped me grieve too. I'll just kind of drive in his old neighborhood. I'll go to this church he used to go to every Monday. It helps me because I'm then I'm not pretending like everything's fine because it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And it's reminding me, it's just taking care of myself. And I know it's a luxury because not everybody gets to fly to Philadelphia from LA every month. But but I also feel like this is the form of my success. I feel like, boy, when things need to happen, I can be there. And that really, really helps.
That's
Oh,
amazing.
wow. I mean, this has just been a wonderful conversation because, people deal with grief in so many different ways. And I mean, you being so open and honest. And I think if you can find someone out there, if you're dealing with grief that you can talk to, that really can help and help you deal with it. And just know that you have done nothing wrong. I mean, that person's life is that person's life. I always tell people just try to remember the good times,
No,
and the good
actually,
memories.
grief really is, it's a version of the joy that you had for that person being in
Yes.
your life. I mean, so that to me, I mean, sometimes it's clear with, I mean, obviously the more difficult people in your life, it's harder to remember that.
Right.
Because sometimes you grieve what you didn't have with them that could have,
Sure.
you like see,
Absolutely.
you see their pain and you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that they're out of pain. But the people that, kind of had a better time of it, you can just sort of remind yourself that it's it's your love that you're really
Hmm.
expressing through your grief, and so you want to keep loving them for your
And you will keep loving them. I mean,
right.
that's the, yeah,
Well,
that
Yeah,
that doesn't go away.
right, but if you just take a minute and honor it and don't feel like there's something wrong with you or you're doing it wrong or you're messed up, or because I know some people get really sick in their soul when they go through when someone dies, like they have a they're just mad at everybody, or I've seen a few people like that, and it sucks because I just feel like the person that's gone would be so upset that this is where you're going with all this. I always say, like, if getting outside help, like getting therapy or something, like you if you're trying to teach yourself how to learn a different language or how to react differently, you might want to get someone to teach you. You're probably not going to be able
Yes.
to teach that to yourself. I mean, it's
hmm
like kind of like we put so much pressure on ourselves to have things figured out, and a little outside help is really helpful.
also have to deal too. Don't let whatever personal like things like the finances, always expect the unexpected when it comes to things like that. I think a lot of people, like if they have family and if there's beneficiaries or if there's a will involved, if there's money involved, and things maybe don't go their way, all of a sudden now that is impacting their grief on that person. You have to learn how to navigate all of that
Yes, and
because,
expect shit when someone dies. Don't. And it because I feel like some people, they want what they want some monetized thing that they didn't get with love from that like they didn't get love from that person, so
Mm.
they want stuff or money. And
yep.
if that's where you're I don't know if you're ever going to find peace, because that is really tough. That's a tough
Mm.
place to be.
Yeah.
It's a
So,
it's better to come from no money like me.
no,
Same.
me too. Me
Just
too.
easier, right?
You
No
know.
time.
Well, this was such a serious topic, but I don't want to leave on like this like sad note because there is a way to get through grief. And one of those ways is by going to wonderful shows, especially during the
Yes.
holidays. And
Absolutely.
you have a Swinging Little Christmas tour with Jane Lynch. Can you tell me a little bit? Yes,
I
Alma.
love it. Woo! Look
Oh,
at you guys.
we're on iTunes too. Woohoo!
Oh,
So
wow. Tell us
cute.
about what we can expect from the show.
Well, the show is basically a comedy Christmas concert with a five-piece jazz band, the Tony Greer Quintet. They're hilarious and they're sweet and they're funny and the music is fun and it's Christmas.
I
How could you
love
mess with
it.
Christmas? So yeah, it's fun. I always say like we're like the Rat Pack, but with a couple of broads.
Oh,
She's a little like Sue Sylvester and I'm a little like Meredith, and
I love
but it's really fun. It's really fun. And again, like these, it's great to have an experience together with your family at Christmas, like that isn't revolved around like just dinner or just judging other people that you see all the time, you know.
okay.
Oh, yeah, we're playing like We're playing kind of all over the country. If you can look at my Instagram, the link is in my at the real Kate Flannery, or go to Jane Lynch Official to get tickets. But it's really fun. It's not a hostage situation, I promise.
I
Yeah.
love it. And we love you, Kate. Thank you
So
so
much.
much for joining us
It was
today.
A
amazing.
pleasure. And anytime, you guys are awesome. Oh my God, thank you so much for having me. And,
Thanks for sharing your story. Seriously,
It was wonderful. For our listeners, be sure to check out a Swingin' Little Christmas tour from November the 30th through December 17th. Tickets can be purchased at janelynchofficial.com. We'll come back. We're going to get into Takeaway with me, Loni. This is Grown Ass Women Talking.
Mwah. All right, welcome back. Now it's time for Lonnie's takeaway.
Why do you sound so exasperated?
Because you just yelled at me. I don't enjoy that.
Not yelling at you, I'm just saying. Siege is under a time crunch.
Is
You over
he?
here.
Where's he got to
Yeah.
do? Okay.
He got talking about. Come on. Okay.
Lonnie, it's time for your takeaway. What did we learn today?
Wasn't Kate Flannery the epitome of class and style?
Amazing.
Dealing with the grief of the loss of her father, who was 100 years old.
Bless his
And
heart.
what I loved about it is that she says everybody's story is different, and maybe you had a difficult time with dealing with grief. Maybe you had a difficult time with that person, but it's not your fault. And you can't feel guilty about certain things that happen. The only thing that you can do is look out for yourself and move on. And I think that's just so important. I know a lot of people that have had, loss. Like my cousin lost her son, and she still has not been able to get over it, no matter what. And so understand that person, just because that person has gone out of your life, they're always going to be there. But I'm sure the person, whether they hated you or they loved you, they don't want you just to stay in a certain way. So do your best to take care of yourself with self-care. Do your best to find a way out of the darkness, and just find the goodness of that person and that memory of that person, and you'll be okay. Any final words, Erica?
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. I just think the one other thing I would add is that, it's lovely that she got to kind of leave it all on the table with her dad, and not everybody has that opportunity. So, with the foresight, which we don't always get, try to make every moment count, and so hopefully, even though it will always be hard when you lose someone you love, maybe, knowing that you said everything you wanted to say could maybe make the, cushion the blow a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. It's always a work in progress.
Yes,
So,
we all are.
thank you. We needed that. We needed that
Yes,
episode.
we did.
So,
And we need Kate in our life every day. What a
all the
blessing. She's
time.
Such a cutie
She's
pie.
she's
Oh,
a joy.
Love
And
her.
thank you all for joining us for another episode of Grown Ass Women Talking. Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating, please. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We make wonderful Instagram posts about all kind of grown-ass women, and it's fun and it's funny, and Erica's always doing some jokes.
I'm attempting jokes.
Follow us on Instagram or follow us on YouTube at GAWTPod. And thanks again to Kate Flannery for joining us. Check out a Swingin' Little Christmas tour from November the 30th through December 17th. Tickets can be purchased at janelynchofficial.com. Come see me perform stand-up. I will be everywhere but Pasadena, California, every Thursday at the Ice House. We're having the holiday show.
And my birthday. I'm coming to see you on the 5th.
Her birth, Lord. Check out the show notes at LonnieLove.com.
Oh, it's my turn. I don't have my script.
Bye.
You
Love
will?
to everyone. What am I going to do with her, America?
Grown Ass Women Talking is a collaboration between True Love Productions, Dunnigan Lane Productions, and Heart Media Productions. Our executive producers are Lonnie Love, Erica Montalfo, and Siege Pokinghorn.
This episode was produced by Siege Pokinghorn and edited by Nicholas Crawford. Our music is by Cole Curtis. Special thanks to Elizabeth Munch,